The 2020 season by Coach Hoare. The 2020 season was one I will never forget for a number of reasons. While a 4-4 record may not seem very remarkable, it was the adversity our team faced and the growth they showed throughout that will always leave an impression on me. Of course, every team in the state was dealt their fair share of adversity well before the season even started. The COVID-19 pandemic not only put our season in doubt, but completely changed life as we know it for the foreseeable future. In addition, the aftermath of the George Floyd killing and the derecho that struck in August had us wondering what else 2020 could possibly bring us. With so many generational moments taking place in such a narrow time frame, I worried not as much about how we would be as a team, but about how the guys were doing as individuals, struggling to comprehend all that was happening in the world. Even before 2020 flipped our world upside down, I wasn't sure how we would be as a team. We were going into the season needing to replace 12 seniors that graduated the year before, and we only had 6 players that played any meaningful varsity snaps. Of those players coming back, only one was returning to the same position on offense as the year before. To make things even more difficult, the pandemic limited the time we could get together over the summer to install all the new concepts we had planned to put into this season, and it caused us to miss out on playing 3 very winnable games to start our year. But more than anything, I wasn't sure how we would be because I realized that for these young men, football may have been the furthest thing from their minds. With so much going on at once, I decided I was going to just do my best to help give the guys whatever they were looking for from football that season, even if it was just to escape reality for a while. It was because our guys had so many potential excuses to not fully commit themselves and expect less out of the season that made our success so memorable. In tough times, this group of young men prepared and performed this season like champions. My first indicator about the character of this team came in the summer. I talked to Carmen Donovan at one point in May, and she told me about how often we would have guys on the football field conducting their own practices. Despite having such a young team and facing additional adversity in the form of a hybrid schedule, players and coaches going on quarantine, and more nagging injuries than I can recall any Lone Tree team having since I've been here, our players showed the type of championship character that this program can take pride in. Leading the way throughout were our 3 senior captains, Will Hutz, Levi Sotson, and Alex Viner. With so many young players and with distractions everywhere you looked, leadership took on an even greater importance than normal this year. And these 3 proved to be exactly the kind of leaders we needed. Will, Levi, and Alex were everything you could ask for as captains. They set the tone for the practice, yet they always had fun. They did not elevate themselves above the team, but they weren't afraid to hold others accountable. They wanted to be successful, but they were willing to sacrifice to let someone else get the glory. I know that the young guys on our team are set up for even greater success in the future because of the example that was set by these group of seniors. During this banquet, we celebrate them. The first member of our team I would like to honor tonight is actually not a player, but our manager, Zach Dominguez. Unlike any other student on our team, Zach has actually been a part of our varsity squad for 5 years. Zach has been a part of our program ever since we started playing 8-man football, and his main responsibility was always to dispense water to the players during practice and games. However, in a sign of the times, Zach's job this year was to make sure everyone received hand sanitizer periodically throughout practice. From the time he started with us, Zach often found himself taking on other roles in practice as well. He was always my go-to guy when it came to having someone to represent another player in drills. Looking back on it, I think it was my way of trying to get a big, strong guy like Zach to consider playing football at some point. I have personally gotten to know Zach through school and football over the past several years, and the most satisfying part of spending so much time around him has been seeing him grow into the young man he is today. While Zach has always been a little quiet, especially compared to some of the other wild personalities we have on our team, there have definitely been times when he came out of his shell in a big way, and when we least expected it. One memory I'll always take with me was last year before our final game against English Valleys. I know I wasn't the only one that was surprised when, just before I was about to deliver my final speech of the season, Zach asked to say a couple of words to the team first. I can't necessarily repeat all the words that were said, but hearing the passion that Zach spoke them with got the guys fired up better than I ever could. It was hardly a coincidence that we ended up winning that night 70-0. Zach was truly one of the guys, and we will miss those magical moments he gave us. The next player I'd like to recognize is Will Hutz. Coaching Will was definitely an experience. Over the past 4 seasons, Will has had a lot of different roles: linebacker, running back, lineman, wedge buster, youth coach, and our 25th string quarterback. One of Will's roles was definitely to keep things light for the team as well. Will's given us a lot of gems that we will be laughing about for many years to come. Among my favorites from this year was Will talking about how he's going to marry up one of the women he saw at the cross-country meet, and him describing just how wide open he was at one point in practice. There was definitely a fair amount of suggestive content, which I probably should have gotten after him for, but because it was Will, I just had to shake my head. Hopefully he learns how to clean it up when he's on the job. As much as Will made things fun for the team, it is easy to forget how much of a soldier Will has been for this program. Will was a leader in every sense of the word. Coming into this season, we knew how important Will's role on the team would be. We asked Will to switch from playing fullback to anchoring our offensive line, a unit that we had to replace entirely from the season before. I knew Will enjoyed playing fullback, as it's the Hutz family dream after all, but he played guard without complaint and did a tremendous job. Will was equally impressive at linebacker this year, although he was a recipient of plenty of tough love at practice. Coach Shield and I got after Will more than we typically do of a senior player when he would make the wrong read, mainly because we knew how important he was to our defense. When we did get after him, Will would never pout or mouth off. He would accept the challenge and get better. Watching Will do all these things gave him the kind of clout with his teammates and coaches that you cannot buy. I remember a couple of times Will calling out guys in practice for not going hard, and those guys looking back at me as if to ask what they should do now. I remember saying at one point in practice, if a guy like Will Hutz tells you to pick it up, you darn sure better pick it up. Through his hard work, sacrifice, and leadership, Will showed our young guys what being a Lone Tree Lion is all about. Next is Levi Sotson. While Will and Alex were both with the program from the first practice freshman year, I remember Levi showing up about a week later before the start of a classroom session. Levi told me that he wanted to play but didn't want to have to play lineman like he did the year before in junior high. I assured him that would not happen. After our final game against Montezuma, I had to laugh when I recounted this with Levi because he made his greatest contributions to our team this year by blocking and doing other thankless jobs. Although Levi didn't put up the big numbers of his senior counterparts, I would say the impact that he had was probably the most satisfying because of the obstacles he faced along the way. Levi had to bide his time to be a regular competitor, and even after we graduated 12 seniors this past year, including several players at his position, the COVID-19 pandemic made it really difficult to get any work leading up to this season. This was really tough for Levi because I talked to him for months after the season about how I was going to have him play slot and feature him heavily when we run our midline option plays. When our guys were able to get together, Levi was living 30 minutes away from Lone Tree and Tiffin, and I didn't know how to get a hold of him. In spite of all these obstacles, Levi always shined when we needed him the most as a team. I'll never forget how Levi hardly repped on offense all week of last year's New London game, and then stepped up big time when a couple of players were absent to be one of our leaders in rush yards to help us take down the reigning state champs. This was the case in so many games this year as well, as Levi seemed to play his best ball when the challenge was greatest. Even though he didn't get the recognition he deserved, he always put aside his own interests and did what we needed and did what he needed to help the team. Levi, I'm sorry I didn't get you the ball more, but I hope you know that your value to this team extended far beyond what stats could measure. And just know I really appreciate what you did. If I didn't, I wouldn't have let you call me Boo Bear. Finally, I'd like to recognize Alex Viner. For the greater part of the past 2 seasons, Alex has been our go-to player. He is definitely the guy that got the most attention from our program over the past 2 years, hence the nickname Hollywood, and he plays with the kind of flash that makes for some awesome highlights. But the first thing I think about when I hear the name Alex Viner is toughness. I'll never forget when we were talking as a staff 3 years ago about mental toughness, and our former assistant Bailey Donovan said that he thought Alex was the most mentally tough guy on the team, as a freshman. At first, I thought he was joking. I remember thinking to myself, how can he think Viner's so mentally tough? The dude just smiles all the time. That's when it hit me. Whatever happened in a game, it didn't rattle him. It was my first year coaching offense then, and I didn't know a thing about pass blocking in 8-man football. So Alex took a lot of shots as the JV quarterback. However, whatever happened, he just kept on smiling and making plays. And boy, did he make plays. At first, it made me nervous when he was a junior to run Alex's 140-pound frame into the teeth of the defense. But the more I watched him, the more he reminded me of Bugs Bunny. It just seemed like whatever situation he encountered on the football field, he could somehow find a way through it. The second word I think of Alex is selfless. As much as Will and Levi were ready and willing to make sacrifices for Alex to help him gain yards and score touchdowns, I know that he was just as willing and ready to do the same thing for them. One moment that really stands out to me was when Alex was a sophomore. When we were running our team offense during the first week of camp, we didn't have a guard. While I was trying to find takers and getting frustrated that I couldn't find anybody willing to play the line, Alex stepped in without saying a word, even though he had just run through drills with another unit as quarterback. I obviously got someone with a little more meat on their bones to take over that spot, but at that moment I really developed a greater appreciation for the kind of teammate and leader Alex was. I will miss Alex as a playmaker for sure, but I will definitely miss him more as a man of incredible character.